A millionaire, after years of chasing professional success, suddenly drives past his daughter's school and finds her standing there in a wrinkled, worn bright sapphire blue dress, being mocked and belittled by her classmates and her blonde stepmother in a striking red dress. That single moment crashed into him like a wrecking ball, forcing him to realize that what he truly squandered wasn't just time, but the precious, irreplaceable years of his own daughter's childhood. Have you ever been so consumed by your daily routine that you completely miss that hopeful look in your child's eyes each morning? Today's story is going to shake you to your core because it's not just about one father's colossal mistake. It's about the second chance life gives to those brave enough to love again. Asterisk. Asterisk, what city are you watching this video from and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. Asterisk. The Whitmore mansion stood at the end of a quiet tree-lined street, a place so pristine and orderly it seemed completely devoid of human warmth. Morning light poured through the enormous windows, illuminating the long dining table dressed in white linens. On the table sat 2 plates with sweet rolls, a steaming cup of milk. On the table sat 2 plate milk, and a cup of coffee that remained untouched. Sophia sat curled in her chair, her feet dangling inches from the floor. She was already dressed in her school uniform, her hair pulled into a crooked braid with one strand loose because she'd tried to tie it herself. Margaret, the housekeeper, leaned down, gently smoothing back a few strands from her forehead. "Eat up, sweetheart. It'll lose its flavor if it gets cold," she said, her voice soft and caring. The little girl looked toward the gate where the black sedan had just pulled away, leaving only a small cloud of dust floating in the morning sun. "Daddy left without saying goodbye again," Sophia whispered, stirring the milk gently with her silver spoon. Margaret placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, forcing a smile. "Your daddy's super busy, honey. But I'm sure he'll ask about school when he gets home." Sophia only nodded slightly, her eyes fixed on the window. Every single morning unfolded exactly the same way. Richard Whitmore left the house before the sun was fully up, taking with him his frantic schedule and leaving behind an enormous void that no one could fill. He was a man who had everything: fame, fortune, influence, but he couldn't hold on to the one thing that truly mattered: the warmth of a family. 3 years ago, his wife Anna had lost her life in a car accident while taking Sophia to school. Since that day, he'd never driven down the street leading to the school gates again. He never showed up at a parent-teacher meeting. And he never dared look his daughter in the eyes for very long. In the afternoons, the house filled only with the tick-tock of the grandfather clock. Margaret often stayed late cleaning just to avoid the lonely footsteps of her boss. Richard would return home, loosen his tie, and stand in the middle of the living room, light reflecting off the framed pictures on the wall photos of Anna smiling, holding baby Sophia. He'd look, but his gaze would only linger for a second before he walked away. Before going to bed, he always stopped outside his daughter's room. A soft light escaped through the crack in the door, bringing with it the subtle scent of baby shampoo. Richard would stand there, listening to Sophia's calm breathing, his hand reaching toward the doorknob, then pulling back again. That simple door felt heavier than all the wealth he possessed. One night, Margaret found Sophia awake. The little girl sat on the floor with colored pencils in hand and a paper full of drawings spread out before her. "Were you dreaming about your mommy again?" Margaret asked gently. Sophia nodded, wiping her eyes. "I saw mommy smiling. She said it was a beautiful day and wanted daddy to come." Margaret squeezed her shoulder softly, not knowing what to say. In the drawing, Richard and Anna stood together, Sophia in the middle holding their hands, while the background was just blank white space empty. How does this story make you feel so far? Can you relate to the pain of a parent who's lost their way? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. On the anniversary of Anna's passing, the house lights were on, but the warmth had vanished. Margaret prepared flowers and set the table. Sophia helped, her little hands clumsily arranging white chrysanthemums. "I want Daddy to blow out the candle with Mommy," she whispered. That night when the candle was nearly burned out, Richard finally came home. He opened the door, a rush of cold air flooding in. He saw Sophia asleep at the table next to a small cake and a tilted flower vase. Margaret approached, her voice low. "Mr. Whitmore, she waited all afternoon. She still believes you two will talk to her mother together like before." Richard only removed his glasses and sat down. "I don't want her bringing that up anymore," he answered, almost in a whisper. Margaret thought about saying more, but his look stopped her. She silently took away the cake, hearing the heavy sigh behind her. Late that night, Richard opened a drawer and took out an old picture frame. It was a photo of Anna holding Sophia in the garden, the wind tousling their hair, their eyes focused on him. Richard touched the glass, his finger trembling slightly. Richard sat on the bed, wondering what kind of man he'd become when even a simple dinner with his daughter felt impossible to handle. The next morning, while Margaret was preparing Sophia's things, she heard Richard's voice echoing from his office. "Hello, I'm going to her school today. There's a fair, right?" Margaret turned, surprised. "Yes, but are you sure you want to go?" Richard nodded, his tone firm. "It's time." The black sedan stopped outside St. Mary's Elementary School. Richard sat for a long while, staring through the window at how the trees cast shadows on the playground. Children's voices echoed laughter, the sound of sneakers running. He hadn't been back to this place since the accident. That street was his last memory of Anna. When he finally got out, sunlight filtered through the leaves. Student artwork was taped along the hallway, small classroom signs everywhere. It all evoked a strange, suffocating feeling of unfamiliarity. He walked slowly, trying to calm his breathing, and stopped when he saw a woman directing children to line up in a corner of the yard. She was Lavra Mitchell, Sophia's homeroom teacher. She wore a light beige dress, her hair neatly pulled back, holding an attendance list. Do you think Richard is finally ready to face his past? What would you do if you were in his shoes? Let me know in the comments. Seeing Richard, she approached with a sweet smile and a warm look. "Mr. Whitmore, it's such a pleasure you could make it. Sophia's going to be so happy." Richard nodded slightly, not knowing what to say. He looked around for his daughter. Sophia stood among a group of friends, clutching her sleeve shyly. When their eyes met, the little girl flinched slightly, then managed a barely visible smile. Richard lowered his head, his heart pounding, a strange feeling after years of emotional stillness. He saw Margaret standing far away by the fence. Perhaps she'd arrived earlier. The ceremony began a small drum beating, children singing the school anthem. Richard stood among the crowd of parents, trying to maintain composure. His eyes constantly followed Sophia, watching her turn and smile at her teacher. Lavra crouched down, placing a hand on the little girl's shoulder, saying something that made Sophia laugh out loud. It had been so long since Richard had seen that laugh. It wasn't shy or hidden. It was clear and genuine enough to make him forget the meetings, contracts, and hundreds of figures waiting on his desk. Margaret stayed far away, clutching her purse, her eyes fixed on them. She saw Sophia smile when Lavra took her hand and led her away, and Richard standing still, his lips curved in a fleeting smile. The fair ended with applause and parent smiles. As people left, Lavra Mitchell stayed behind, collecting some unfinished files before approaching Richard. "Thank you for coming. I'm sure Sophia will remember this day." Richard only nodded, looking at the sun-bathed schoolyard where Sophia ran toward the gate. Hand in hand with Margaret, Laura's comment was soft, but it stayed in his mind like a thin thread touching a wound that hadn't fully healed. A few days later, Richard received an email from Lavra. It contained a thank you note and a photo of Sophia doing crafts in class. Her face radiant. "She's hardworking and adorable. I just hope I can help her gain more confidence." He reread it several times, his fingers unconsciously tracing the phone screen. A strange feeling settled in him, not emotion, but a vague sense of comfort that someone truly cared about his daughter. Before we continue, please take a moment to leave a comment about this story and rate it from 1 to 10. How are you feeling? If there's anything you'd like to share, I'm always here to listen. I hope you find a moment of peace and reflection as you follow this healing story and its journey of courage and justice. Margaret noticed Richard started mentioning the new teacher often. He'd ask about her classes, sometimes letting out a slight chuckle when he said, "Lavra mentioned she has a gift for art." Margaret didn't respond, choosing to observe in silence. In her experienced eyes, there was a feeling of unease. Late one Friday afternoon, Richard received a text from Lavra inviting him to lunch. She said she wanted to discuss Sophia's academic plan more deeply. He looked at the message, hesitated a moment, then accepted. The appointment was at a small place downtown where piano music mixed with the soft clinking of silverware and glasses. Lavra arrived punctually, dressed in a light beige dress, her hair simply pulled back. When she sat down, the subtle scent of jasmine made Richard feel unexpectedly relaxed. They talked about Sophia, her studies, and the challenges facing children who lack part of their family. Lavra shared her own difficult childhood: an alcoholic father, a mother working night shifts, leaving her and her sister depending on each other. "Maybe that's why I understand Sophia better than most," she said, her hands gently folded together. Richard fell quiet, a wave of empathy and compassion flooding him. For the first time in years, he felt someone was listening without judging him. As time passed, Lavra started appearing at the Whitmore house more often. At first to tutor, then just to stay for dinner for convenience. And then, but Sophia gradually got used to it, even grew fond of her teacher. Waiting for her at the door every afternoon. Margaret arranged the meals, watching the scene with a growing sense of dread. The way Lavra looked at Richard, a soft gaze that still had a touch of calculation, unsettled her. One rainy afternoon, Richard was working in his office when he heard Sophia crying downstairs. He rushed out and saw the little girl sobbing at her desk with Lavra sitting beside her, a hand on her shoulder. "Did someone bother you?" he asked. Lavra looked up, sighing softly. "I didn't want to tell you, but today the kids were calling her the girl without a mom. They're so thoughtless. And Sophia is sensitive." Richard froze. He hadn't realized his daughter was enduring those words at school. "Did you talk to the principal?" "I'll handle it. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. I just think what Sophia needs most is her daddy's presence." What do you think about Laura's role in Sophia's life? Is she truly helping, or is there something more going on? Share your thoughts below. Her silence deepened at his words. Lavra looked at him with a pitying gaze. "A child can't draw a rainbow if no one teaches them what color the sky is." Richard nodded slightly, his heart heavy. He had no idea that Lavra herself had been the one who'd let the story slip in the classroom, making it easier for her to gain access to the Whitmore house. From that day on, Margaret noticed everything changed. Lavra began controlling the rhythm of the entire house. She set the table earlier because Mrs. Mitchell teaches Sophia at 6. Margaret was sidelined in the smallest decisions. Even grocery shopping had to go through Lavra. "Margaret, rest. I'll take care of it," Lavra often said, her smile thin but her eyes cold. Margaret understood her position was being replaced. But she chose silence for Sophia's sake. One night, Lavra attended Sophia's birthday party. The room was simply decorated, just the three of them. Richard cut the cake, Sophia blew out the candles, and Margaret stood nearby preparing gifts. Lavra pulled a small box wrapped in pale gold paper from her purse. "This gift is very special." She opened it. Inside was a soft beige dress with a white lace collar. "Wear this. Your mother in heaven would be happy." The atmosphere suddenly grew tense. Margaret stiffened, nearly dropping her plate. Sophia held the dress, smiling slightly, not fully understanding the meaning of the words. Richard watched the scene, a strange sense of peace invading him, as if the cold house finally had a touch of human warmth. He didn't catch Margaret's fleeting look, a look of worry mixed with helplessness. When the party ended, Sophia ran upstairs to show off her new gift, and Lavra helped clear the table. Richard sat drinking his whiskey, looking at the well-lit room. "Thank you, Lavra. You've really helped her a lot." She smiled, placing a hand on the back of the chair near him. "I just want Sophia to be happy. And I think you need that too." He turned toward her, his gaze wandering as the clock struck the hour. Yes, I need it too. Thank you. When Richard stood and headed to his office, Margaret passed by the stairs and stopped on the first step. She looked down where Lavra was collecting cups. Lavra glanced up, meeting her gaze. A thin smile crossed her lips, so brief it was hard to tell if it was genuine or not. The lamplight reflected in her cold eyes, as if something invisible hid beneath the pale beige exterior. Are you starting to see the warning signs? What would you do if you were Margaret? Let us know your thoughts. A year later, Richard Whitmore and Lavra Mitchell's wedding took place in the small garden behind the house. Not many guests, nothing ostentatious. Soft sunlight spread over strips of white fabric. Some old rose bushes that Margaret had planted years ago still bloomed sporadically, swaying in the breeze. Cheers and applause rang out, mixing with the clinking of glasses. Everyone agreed Richard was lucky to find a new woman who knew how to care for him and understand his heart. Lavra smiled as she cut the cake, skillfully taking Sophia's hand and drawing the little girl close. You promised to obey your mommy, right? She said softly, just loud enough for Richard to hear. Sophia felt her eyes go round. Puzzled why the word mommy hurt her heart. Margaret stood far away, forcing a smile, a sense of bad omens settling in her heart. A week after the wedding, she received notice she was being let go because the family needed a change of atmosphere. But since Margaret left, the house felt different. There was no longer the smell of apple pie in the mornings, nor the familiar shuffle of slippers in the hallway. Lavra began reordering everything, from eating habits to how Sophia was expected to study. A child needs structure, she often said. Her voice firm. Richard trusted her without question. Lavra also brought her brother, Brian Mitchell, to live with them. He'll help me take care of the house when I'm busy with school, she explained. Brian seemed friendly, always with an easy smile, but his eyes were too shifty. He quickly befriended Richard's company staff, skillfully inserting himself into financial meetings. Every afternoon when Richard worked late, Brian often stayed in the office, saying he was reviewing files for my sister. Do you sense the trap closing in around Richard? What warning signs would you look for? Comment below. Xing. Meanwhile, Lavra became a respected teacher at the school. She knew how to command respect, always punctual, always well-groomed, always speaking correctly. Only Sophia perceived a different person in the classroom. Lavra was no longer the kind woman from the early days. Every time Sophia made a calculation error or spilled paint, she had to stand in the corner until the end of class. This way you'll remember better, Lavra would say. Staring at her. The other children stayed quiet. No one dared laugh. One afternoon, Sophia sat in the bathroom hiding her face, crying. Lucy Henderson, a red-haired classmate and daughter of Claudia Henderson, the PTA president, walked in by chance. What's wrong? Did Mrs. Mitchell scold you again? Sophia only shook her head, trying to dry her tears. I dropped my drawing. She said I don't value mommy's things. But, Lucy hesitated, putting a hand on her friend's shoulder. She shouldn't say that. That night, Claudia heard her daughter's story. A mother's intuition made her pay attention. She asked other parents and realized everyone avoided mentioning Lavra Mitchell. A young teacher quietly said, at her previous school, she was disciplined for mistreating a student. But the record was erased thanks to her connections with the board. Claudia knew something was being hidden. Margaret, since leaving the Whitmore house, remained worried. She often called Claudia, indirectly asking about Sophia. When she learned of Claudia's suspicions, she told her everything she'd witnessed. The two women began a quiet investigation. Margaret discreetly gathered photos, messages, and any details that could prove Lavra wasn't who she seemed. In the big house, Richard was increasingly absent. Lavra buried herself in work, expanding investments, giving Brian total authority over auxiliary financial management. Every afternoon, Lavra sent him photos of Sophia with the caption, "She's progressing." The photos were always well lit. Sophia with a forced smile, but no one noticed. At school, the reality was completely different. Sophia rarely played with friends. Her teacher often said the girl was prone to withdrawing and needs to learn independence. Small mistakes like spelling errors or spilling water meant she had to stand in a corner with her hands clasped behind her back. Under Laura's gaze, all the children kept their heads down. What would you do if you discovered a teacher was treating your child this way? Share your protective parent instincts below. One day, Claudia happened to pass by the back courtyard and saw Sophia standing punished in the hallway, her eyes red. The little girl was whispering to herself. Clutching the torn drawing in her hand, Claudia approached, but Lavra appeared quickly, walking toward them with a cold smile. Sophia just needs to learn responsibility. I think her father will thank me. Claudia stopped, saying nothing, but the image burned into her mind. At home, Richard began noticing his daughter spoke less, her eyes often avoiding him. Are you okay? He asked at the table. Sophia only nodded, took a few spoonfuls of soup, and set down her spoon. Lavra intervened. She's a bit tired, probably from studying too much. I already asked the nurse to check on her. Richard didn't insist. He believed his new wife knew what was best for his daughter. A few days later, Sophia came home with scraped hands. Richard crouched quickly, worried. What happened? Lavra answered first, her voice light. She's clumsy. She tripped in the yard. It's nothing. He wanted to take her to the doctor, but Lavra stopped him. You worry too much. All kids fall sometimes. Richard forced a smile, but when he saw the dried scrapes, his heart ached. That night, it was hard for him to sleep. Rain pounded against the window, the clock ticking close to 2 in the morning. A dim light came from Sophia's room. He walked slowly, opening the door slightly. The little girl was curled up in bed, hugging her old teddy bear, murmuring something. Richard listened, feeling his heart tighten. Mommy, I'm scared. I'm scared of her. He walked in and sat on the edge of the bed. Sophia startled, tears in her eyes. Daddy. Mommy can hear you, right? Richard pulled her into his embrace, holding her tight. It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here now. She trembled, her tears soaking his shirt. A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of rain falling. Richard looked around the room. The drawings on the wall were all gray and beige, no pink tones remained. He kissed her forehead gently, promising to take her out that weekend, promising to make it up to her. But as he stood up, the light filtering through the door crack stopped him cold. A slender figure stood in the hallway. Lavra said nothing, just watched. Her face expressionless, her eyes fixed on his hand that still touched his daughter. Asterisk. Do you feel Richard's awakening? Is it too late, or is there still hope? Tell me what you're thinking right now. Asterisk. That night, Richard sat on the edge of his bed, eyes open long after midnight. The image of Sophia trembling in his arms kept returning, mixing with her whispered call to Mommy, that echoed in his head like a thin thread tightening around his chest. He got up, reached for his daughter's door handle, but stopped halfway. His shadow stretched across the floor, hesitating as if unsure whether to move forward or turn back. The next morning, everything seemed normal. Lavra wore a beige silk blouse, her hair neatly styled, and had set out breakfast meticulously. You have a meeting this morning, right? I already sent you the documents to sign by email. Richard only nodded, trying to maintain a facade of calm. Sophia ate in silence, afraid to look at anyone. When Lavra asked her a soft question, the little girl immediately felt her spoon tremble. The phone rang, interrupting their meal. Hello? Richard looked at the screen, an unknown number. The woman's voice on the other end was clear and firm. This is Claudia Henderson, Lucy's mom, Sophia's classmate. I apologize for calling so suddenly, but I think you need to hear this. It could be about your daughter. He stayed silent for a few seconds, his voice low. I'm listening. Claudia hesitated. Could we meet in private? I don't feel comfortable discussing this over the phone. The meeting was arranged at a cafe near his office. Claudia arrived first, wearing a gray coat, looking tense. Richard sat across from her, waiting in silence. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, gripping her hot teacup. "I know this won't be easy to hear, but Sophia doesn't look well. My daughter tells me she cries often at school. And there's this." She pulled a phone from her purse and played a short recording. The voice on the speaker was hoarse and sharp. "Who do you think you are to speak that way? Having a child like you, your parents should be very ashamed." Beneath the words was a muffled sound, followed by a small sob. Claudia turned off the device, looking directly at Richard. "Lucy recorded this during class." "That's Mrs. Mitchell's voice. I know she's your wife, but I think you have a right to know. ***, what would you do if you heard this recording about your child? How would you react? Share your thoughts below. ***. Richard's hands tightened on the table. The aroma of coffee mixed with a bitter taste in his throat. He said nothing, simply nodded in thanks and left the cafe earlier than planned. That afternoon when he entered the house, Lerva was arranging flowers in the living room. "You're home early today. I made your favorite dish," she said, turning with a soft gaze. Richard observed every movement, her tone, her smile. Everything was familiar, too natural for anyone to suspect her. Sophia came down the stairs, saw her father, and stopped. Lavra looked at the little girl, smiling. "Say hello to your daddy." Sophia made a slight bow, her hands gripping the edge of her skirt tightly. Richard noticed that small detail, a habit Sophia only showed when she was afraid. Yet in front of him, Lavra maintained her unwavering smile, her voice so soft it was hard to believe she'd spoken the words from the recording. That same night, he opened his laptop and connected to the house's security camera system, the one he'd installed only to monitor Sophia's safety. Images scrolled across the screen. The hallway corner, the living room, the kitchen, down to the small study room. One segment showed Sophia sitting writing, Lavra standing behind her, pointing at the notebook. The audio wasn't clear, but Laura's lips moved rapidly, and Sophia flinched, dropping her pencil. The screen shook slightly as the little girl bent to pick it up. There was no sound, but the image was enough to disturb him. Richard leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. Part of him didn't want to believe it. Could be a camera malfunction. Perhaps just a misunderstanding. He told himself he was being too sensitive. That old grief was making him see everything through a distorted lens. Are you seeing what Richard is finally seeing? Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight. What signs would you look for? While he struggled between doubt and trust, Brian was steadily gaining ground in Whitmore Corporation. The man laughed skillfully, presenting himself to partners as Mr. Whitmore's personal assistant, scheduling meetings, sending contract confirmations, and even signing documents on Richard's behalf. Employees assumed it was Richard's decision, and no one dared question it. Margaret, despite having been fired, never gave up. When she heard Claudia tell about the recording, she knew Sophia was truly in danger. "We need to see this with our own eyes," Margaret said during a private call. Claudia agreed, setting a meeting time after school. "Just come as if you're visiting an old friend. I'll help." The next morning, the sky was overcast, the air cold and damp. Richard left the house early, Lavra seeing him off with her usual soft smile. As he drove away, she took her phone, her voice urgent. "Brian, repeat which contract needs to be signed immediately?" The man on the other end laughed softly. "His private investment accounts. Once you sign, I'll handle the rest." Lavra looked toward the stairs, making sure Sophia was still asleep, then lowered her voice. "Be careful. Don't leave anything lying around. Do you see how the trap was set from the beginning? What would you do to protect someone you love from manipulation like this?" At the same time, Margaret stood at the entrance of St. Mary's Elementary. Lucy held a small bouquet of flowers, pretending to look for the old office. Students poured out in crowds, their chatter filling the air. Among the crowd, she saw Lucy walking slowly with Sophia, saying something that made the little girl smile slightly. The scene made Margaret want to run and hug her, but she only watched, her eyes filling with tears. A voice called from behind. "Miss Margaret." She turned, feeling her heart sink as Lavra came out through the side gate, wearing a long coat. Her eyes as cold as glass. I don't believe you have any reason to be here. Margaret maintained her composure, offering a slight smile. Just passing by to see an old friend. I miss the children. Lavra walked closer, stopping just a step away, her voice low but determined. I don't like outsiders taking too much interest in my family's private affairs. Margaret gripped the flowers tight, feeling as if the smell of old chalk from the classroom mixed with Laura's pale beige perfume, making it hard to breathe. I just want you to know that children can't hide their fear. You can see it in their eyes. Lavra didn't respond, just kept staring. At that moment, the wind blew Margaret's scarf off, brushing against Laura's shoe. Lavra bent down to pick it up, put it back in Margaret's hand, and gave a thin smile. Be careful. Some things, once you pick them up, are hard to let go. Margaret clutched the scarf, stepping back, her eyes staying firm, but her heart racing. Across the schoolyard, the bell rang, scattering birds from the treetops. Lavra turned away, her silhouette fading into the iron gate, leaving the space as quiet as if there had been no conversation. How does this confrontation make you feel? Would you have the courage to stand up like Margaret did? Margaret tried to avoid Laura's gaze while walking through the school gate. She blended with the crowd of parents waiting to pick up their children, holding her old cloth bag like a normal mother. Then from her spot near the trees, she saw Sophia. The little girl was huddled in the corner of the playground, away from the group of friends playing tag. She held a piece of drawing paper in her hand, her small fingers stained with paint. On the paper was a house with 3 people, a tall man, a woman in a pale beige dress, and the brown-haired girl between them. But the lines were broken, the colors incomplete. As if someone had tried to color over what once was erased. Margaret stood still, her hands unconsciously clenching. When the dismissal bell rang, children rushed toward the gate. Lavra appeared wearing a long coat, serene, but her eyes constantly scanning. Sophia walked slowly behind, still holding the drawing. Margaret called softly, Sophia! The little girl startled, looking around, but Lavra had already walked over, putting a hand on her shoulder, gently guiding her toward the car. Hurry, dear. It's going to rain. The car door slammed shut, cutting off all sound. Margaret only caught a glimpse of Sophia's face pressed against the window, blurred by her small breath. Claudia approached, her expression serious. I saw it, she whispered. Take a photo, Margaret. We need evidence. Margaret took out her phone, her hand trembling, quickly snapping a picture of the moving car, inside which were 2 figures, one large, one small. I'm sending this to Richard. He needs to know. Claudia gave a worried look. Let's hope he believes it. Meanwhile, at Whitmore Corporation, Brian had skillfully trapped Richard in a series of back-to-back meetings. Just sign here, the man said, confidently handing over a sheet of paper. Temporary authorization for subsidiary investments. Just administrative stuff. Richard looked up, meeting Brian's eyes, the confident smile, the familiar behavior. It made him not doubt. He signed. That same afternoon, Lavra showed up at the company's accounting office, her voice soft but decisive. Hello, Mr. Whitmore authorized me to manage the family education fund. Please give me the latest statement. The accountant didn't dare ask more, simply nodded. Can you feel the walls closing in? What would you do if you realized too late that you'd been deceived? At the same time, Margaret sent Richard a text message. Please look at the photo I sent you. Sophia's not okay. The message came with an attachment. Sophia standing alone at the foot of a tree. The 3-person house drawing in her hand. The message arrived just as he was in the middle of an important meeting. Richard saw the notification flash, but his assistant had just put a critical contract in front of him, so he set the phone aside. Late in the afternoon, light rain fell. Lavra returned looking tired. I need to rest for a while, she said, taking off her shoes at the door. Sophia, do your homework, please. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were cold. The little girl nodded, sitting at her study desk, the pencil trembling in her hand. Crooked letters slowly ran across the page. When Richard returned home, the light in his daughter's room was still on. He called softly, hearing no response. Entering, he saw drawing paper scattered all over the floor. Sophia was huddled next to the desk, her eyes sunken. He crouched down to pick one up. It was a drawing of a woman standing between the father and daughter, separating them with a high wall, on top of which were shaky words, "Daddy can't see me." Richard sat momentarily stunned. From the door, Lavra entered. "You're worrying too much about her again," she said, her voice light, still holding a cup of tea. Richard looked up, his eyes tired. "I think I've let you teach her too much." The phrase seemed to float in the air, slow and heavy. Lavra stood still for a few seconds, then gave a faint smile. "I'm just trying to do better, Richard." "Maybe you forgot that I'm not the enemy." Richard didn't answer. He put the drawing on the desk, looking out the window. Outside, the rain kept falling. That night when he left his daughter's room, the hallway was silent. Lavra still sat in the living room, her tea now cold. After a while, she got up and walked straight to her husband's office. The wooden cabinet was slightly open. She opened it, drawer by drawer, until she found the silver picture frame Dot in the photo. The soft brown-haired woman held Sophia, with Richard behind them, a rare, genuine smile on his face. Lavra took the frame, her eyes chilling, her lips curving slightly, a mix of jealousy and curiosity. Her index finger gently traced the woman's face in the photo, then stopped at the corner of her mouth. "There's only room for one person in this world," she whispered. Placing the frame face down on the desk. "Dot, do you see the evil hiding behind the smile? What do you think will happen next?" The next morning, Richard woke late. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, illuminating the empty desk. The silver picture frame was gone. He looked around, a feeling of unease crawling up his chest. Something small had just been taken, and he didn't know why he felt so frightened. The Family Day announcement was sent to all parents at the beginning of the week. Printed on blue-bordered paper, formal, like a gentle reminder of simple happiness. Take a photo with your child, share a small lunch, write wishes to each other. Lavra was the first to open the envelope. She looked at the paper, her eyes scanning the lines, then folded it and put it in her desk drawer as if nothing had happened. That afternoon when Sophia mentioned that Lucy was excited, preparing a new dress for this special day, Lavra only gave a faint smile. "The school's not doing it this year. Your friend must be mistaken." Sophia looked up, puzzled. "But Lucy said the principal even made an announcement." Lavra set down her teacup, her voice indifferent. "In some things, not everyone can participate. Only good children are invited." Sophia fell silent. Lavra understood the implication very well. That night after Lavra went upstairs, the little girl opened her closet and took out the old pink dress, the last gift her mother had given her before she left. The hem was frayed. Some threads had come loose, but Sophia carefully smoothed every wrinkle, pressing it meticulously as she remembered Margaret doing. "I'm going to wear this dress. If Daddy comes, he'll be happy," she whispered to her teddy bear, her voice hoarse with emotion. Lavra opened the door just then, her eyes landing on the dress. "Don't wear that. It looks terrible." The words were direct, without emotion. She turned away, the soft sound of her heels echoing on the wooden floor. Sophia watched her leave, her lips trembling, but she didn't cry. She just hugged the dress tight, as if afraid that if she let go, her mother would disappear again. How does this moment break your heart? Can you feel Sophia's pain? Let me know in the comments. The next morning, the sky was clear. Lavra put on her coat, carefully tying a scarf around her neck. "Today I'll go to the school instead of Daddy. He's busy with meetings, probably won't have time." Sophia nodded, her eyes downcast. In the back of her mind, a small pathetic flicker of hope remained. St. Mary's Elementary was livelier than usual. White ribbons hung on the gate, groups of students holding their parents' hands, laughter filling the yard. Sophia stood near the edge, her pink dress slightly wrinkled, clutching her small teddy bear. Sunlight shone, reflecting off her worn shoes. Lavra stood a few steps away, a mocking smile on her face. It was Sophia's class's turn for a photo. The kids crowded onto the platform, hand in hand with their parents. Sophia approached slowly, her eyes scanning expectantly. No one came forward. A few children laughed softly. That dress is so old. Your mom must not have money for a new one. Lavra approached, her voice clear in the crowd. Remember, children, everyone should set a good example. Except some who still don't know the meaning of dignity. The schoolyard went silent. Sophia lowered her head, her hands gripping the teddy bear until it wrinkled. A few parents exchanged glances, but no one dared speak. In downtown Manhattan, Richard sat in a glass-walled conference room on the 25th floor. His executive team waited for his response to quarterly reports, but his mind was elsewhere. His phone vibrated. A text from Margaret. She's at the school wearing the old dress. Standing alone. The photo loaded. Richard's breath caught. Sophia looked impossibly small among brightly dressed students. Parents surrounded their children, laughing together. Colorful balloons floated in the background. But Sophia stood apart, alone. Her old pink dress hung loose, hem frayed, color faded. One hand clutched her worn teddy bear. A memory crashed over him. The gray rain 3 years ago. Anna turning to smile. I'll pick her up and be right back. The car door closing. Red taillights disappearing. The last time he saw his wife smile. Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. Excuse me. Family emergency. He grabbed his jacket and strode toward the doors, shoes clicking on marble. His assistant intercepted at the elevator. Mr. Whitmore, the board meeting. Cancel everything. The elevator descended. Richard loosened his tie. His reflection showed a man he barely recognized. Expensive cream suit, designer watch. But his eyes told the truth. A father who'd abandoned his daughter. He emerged at a near run. His driver pulled up in the black Mercedes. St. Mary's Elementary. As fast as you can. Through tinted windows, the city blurred past. Richard could only see that photo. His daughter, alone, waiting. The guilt of 3 years finally broke through. What had he been doing? Building empires while his daughter withered? What city are you watching this video from and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. Meanwhile, at St. Mary's Elementary, Family Day was in full swing. Morning sun cast warm light across the playground. Colorful banners, face painting, balloon animals. Laughter filled the air. And near the brick wall, Sophia stood motionless. The bright sapphire blue dress she'd wanted to wear still hung at home. Lavra had hidden it. Instead, Sophia wore the pink dress, loose threads, faded fabric. Other children whispered, "That's the girl whose mom died. Her new mom doesn't even like her." Sophia heard every word. She hugged her teddy bear tighter. Lavra Mitchell, now Lavra Whitmore, stood near the photo platform, arms crossed, watching with cold satisfaction. She wore a stunning beige designer dress, blonde hair in elegant waves. But her eyes held no warmth. Only calculation. The plan was working beautifully. The principal's voice crackled. Attention families. Class photos starting now. Sophia's class was called first. Children squealed, tugging parents toward the platform. Sophia approached slowly. Her eyes scanned desperately. Maybe Daddy had come. Maybe, but there was no cream-colored suit. Sophia. Laura's voice cut through. Come here, dear. The little girl walked forward on trembling legs. Lavra knelt down, smile never reaching her eyes. Sweetheart, not everyone has a parent who can make it. Some daddies are just too busy. The words landed like slaps. Actually, Lavra added, why don't you wait by the wall? Your dress is a bit rumpled. We want the class photo to look nice. Sophia felt tears prick but blinked furiously. She turned and walked back toward the wall. Behind her, whispers. The photographer began. Okay, everyone say cheese. Happy voices. The camera flashed. Another perfect family memory. Except for one little girl standing alone in shadows. At that moment, Richard's Mercedes screeched to a halt outside the school gates. He was out before the car stopped, striding toward the entrance. The security guard recognized him. Mr. Whitmore. Richard was already past him. His heart hammered. He rounded the corner and stopped dead. Sunshine, balloons, happy children with proud parents. And there, pressed against the brick wall, stood his daughter. Time slowed. Richard saw every detail. Sophia's thin shoulders curved inward, her death grip on that teddy bear, her head bowed. His chest tightened. This was his fault. All of it. He started walking, then jogging, then running. Parents turned to stare. Sophia! His voice carried across the playground. The little girl's head snapped up. Her father? Impossible. But he kept coming, dodging around people, his jacket flying open. Sophia, baby, I'm here. Daddy's here. The teddy bear fell. Sophia's wall shattered. A sob tore from her throat. Daddy! She ran toward him. Richard dropped to his knees on the asphalt and caught her. His arms wrapped around her small body. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby girl. Sophia buried her face in his shoulder and wept 3 years of loneliness pouring out. Her arms wrapped around his neck. Richard rocked her gently, one hand cradling her head. His own tears fell freely. I've got you. I'm never leaving you alone again. Never. The playground went silent. Hundreds of eyes watched. Lavra stood frozen, fury barely controlled. This wasn't supposed to happen. Smoothing her expression, Lavra walked toward them, heels clicking. Richard! What a surprise. I thought you had your board meeting. Richard didn't look up. His focus remained on Sophia. Lavra tried again. Darling, you're making a scene. Don't. Richard's voice was low but cut like a blade. Don't say another word to her. He finally raised his head. Lavra stepped back. The man looking at her held cold, burning fury. We'll talk. Later at home. About many things. Claudia Henderson approached, placing herself between Lavra and them. Mr. Whitmore, would you like somewhere quieter? My car is in the lot. Richard nodded, standing with Sophia still wrapped around him. The little girl pulled back slightly, tear-stained. You came, she whispered. I came, baby. I'm here. Richard wiped away tears. And I'm going to make everything right. Can we go home? Just you and me. Yes, anything you want, sweetheart. Before we continue, please take a moment to leave a comment about this story and rate it from 1 to 10. How are you feeling? If there's anything you'd like to share, I'm always here to listen. I hope you find a moment of peace and reflection as you follow this healing story and its journey of courage and justice. As Richard carried Sophia toward the parking lot, the crowd parted. Margaret appeared, falling into step beside them. The car's ready, sir. I called Dr. Morrison. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for calling me. She needed you, Mr. Whitmore. She's always needed you. I know. God help me. I know. Behind them, Lavra watched her world crumble. Parents were whispering, staring with suspicion. She needed to call Brian, move the money transfers ahead of schedule. But Claudia Henderson was also calling the school board. Reporting concerns about a teacher's treatment of a vulnerable student. The dominoes were falling. The drive home was quiet, except for Sophia's occasional sobs as she calmed. She sat pressed against Richard's side, his arm around her shoulders. Richard noticed things he'd been blind to. How thin Sophia had become. Dark circles under her eyes. A small bruise on her wrist. Baby, I need you to tell me the truth. Has Lavra hurt you? Physically? Sophia tensed. She grabbed me once. When I spilled juice. She said I was careless. Richard's jaw clenched. What else? Sometimes she makes me stand in the corner. For hours. Until my legs hurt. Sophia's voice was small. She says I need to learn to be better. You're perfect exactly as you are. This isn't your fault. None of it. Margaret turned in her seat. Mr. Whitmore, there's more. Things I should have told you sooner. Tell me. Everything. Margaret recounted the systematic isolation. How Lavra had restricted Sophia's activities, friendships, independence. The calculated cruelties disguised as discipline. She stopped eating breakfast most days. And the drawings, sir. You should see what she draws now. Where are the drawings? Margaret pulled a folder from her bag. I saved a few. Richard opened it with trembling hands. The earliest drawings showed stick figures holding hands. Daddy. Sophia and a woman labeled teacher friend. Hopeful. But the recent ones. Dark scribbles. A small figure in a corner, separated by heavy black lines. A house with all windows colored black. A little girl with her mouth X'd out, next to a woman whose smile was drawn like shark teeth. Jesus Christ, Richard whispered. Sophia made a small sound. She said only bad children draw ugly pictures. No, baby, no. Richard closed the folder and pulled her closer. These drawings are important. They're honest. And honest is never bad. By the time they reached the mansion, Richard's shock had crystallized into cold purpose. This was systematic psychological abuse. And it needed to end. Today, he carried Sophia inside. Margaret, could you draw Sophia a bath? With those bubble bath tablets she used to like? Of course, sir. And stay with her? I have phone calls to make. Sophia hesitated, looking up with worried eyes. You won't leave? The question broke his heart. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be downstairs. If you need me, call out, and I'll come running. She nodded, allowing Margaret to lead her upstairs. Once alone, Richard went into his office. He stood for a moment, breathing deeply. Then he picked up his phone. James? Richard Whitmore. I need you here in 2 hours with divorce papers and a restraining order. Yes, about my wife. She's been abusing my daughter. The second call went to security. Review all security footage from my home for the past 6 months. I'm looking for evidence of child abuse. Send it to my attorney's office. The third call was hardest. Claudia? Richard Whitmore. I need to thank you. That recording your daughter made of Lavra in the classroom. Do you still have it? I need it. For evidence. As Claudia recounted reports from other parents, Richard felt rage building. But beneath the rage, determination. He'd failed once. Never again. His phone buzzed. Lavra. He let it ring through, then blocked her number. One more call. To his CFO. David. Freeze all accounts associated with Lavra Whitmore. Everything. And I need a full audit of all transactions involving her or her brother Brian Mitchell. David, I think I'm being embezzled. Shocked silence. Jesus, Richard. Run the audit. Richard went upstairs. He found Sophia in the bathroom, sitting in bubbles, with Margaret washing her hair. The scene was so tender it made his throat tight. How are we doing? Sophia looked up, a tiny smile on her face. The bubbles smell like strawberries. I forgot. They're your favorite, Margaret said softly. Richard knelt beside the tub. Sophia, I want you to know something. You're safe now. Lavra won't be living here anymore. The little girl's eyes went wide. Really? You promise? I promise. Cross my heart. He made their old gesture. From now on, it's just you, me, and Margaret. No more being scared. Okay. Sophia launched herself forward, soaking his shirt with bathwater, but he didn't care. He just held her. I love you, Daddy, she whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything. Downstairs, the front door opened. Laura's heels clicked across marble. Richard? We need to talk about what happened today. Richard stood slowly. Margaret, lock this door after I leave. Yes, sir. He descended to find Lavra pacing, phone in hand, face flushed. Thank God you're home. Darling, people are saying awful things. Where's Brian? The question threw her off. What? He's probably at the office. Call him. Tell him to come here. Now, Richard, what's going on? I'm scaring you? Richard's laugh was bitter. He pulled out his phone, showing her the photo of Sophia alone, Sophia's tear-stained cheeks. Sophia's drawings. These scare me. Lavra, my daughter, terrorized in her own home. So call your brother or I call the police. Laura's mask slipped. Her eyes went cold. You have no idea what you're doing. Actually, for the first time in 3 years, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm protecting my daughter. From you. Brian arrived within 20 minutes, nervous. As soon as he entered, his eyes darted around. Richard. Hey man. Sit down, Brian. Something in Richard's tone made him sit on the edge of the sofa, leg bouncing. Richard remained standing. I'm going to make this simple. I know about the accounts. Brian went pale. I don't know what you. The education fund. The auxiliary investments. The offshore transfers. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Lavra turned slowly. Fear flickered across her face. That's ridiculous, she said. Everything was authorized, with forged signatures. Richard pulled out a folder. Preliminary audit. $370,000 moved out of accounts I didn't authorize. Money for Sophia's future. The number hung in the air. Brian stood. This is insane. I'm calling my lawyer. By all means. He can meet mine. I've already filed a report with the Financial Crimes Unit. You can't prove anything, Lavra spat. 100,000 to a jewelry company in the Cayman Islands? 50,000 to a luxury car dealer under your maiden name? Lavra, I was just grieving. And you exploited that. She laughed harshly. Don't play the victim. You were happy to have me around when I was raising your daughter because you couldn't stand to look at her. Don't you dare. Richard's voice dropped dangerously. Don't act like anything you did was for Sophia. I gave her structure. Discipline. You abused her. You isolated her, humiliated her, made her feel worthless. Brian moved toward the door. I'm not staying. You'll stay until the police arrive. I've already called them. The doorbell rang. Through the glass, blue and red lights flickered. Laura's composure shattered. You bastard. You think you're saving her? You're the one who abandoned her first. The words hit. Richard flinched because they were true. But then he thought of Sophia upstairs, finally safe. You're right, he said quietly. I failed her spectacularly, but the difference? I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it right, while you explain yourself to the authorities. The police were efficient. Evidence of fraud was compelling. The recordings Claudia provided, combined with Sophia's medical examination Margaret had arranged, painted a damning picture. As the officers read Lavra her rights, she maintained icy dignity. But her eyes, meeting Richard's one last time, burned with hatred. This isn't over, she hissed. Double quotes, yes, it is. Brian went less quietly, protesting. The officers remained unmoved. When the door closed, the mansion fell silent. Margaret descended the stairs. Sophia's asking for you. She heard the sirens. Richard climbed the steps. When he reached Sophia's room and saw her sitting up in bed, freshly bathed in her favorite star pajamas, something in his chest unlocked. Is she gone? Sophia asked, voice small. She's gone, baby. She's not coming back. Never? Never. I promise. Sophia nodded slowly. Then, Daddy? My tummy hurts. Richard sat on the bed. Hungry hurts or scared hurts? Both. How about we start with hungry hurts? Margaret makes the world's best grilled cheese. Think you could eat one? A tiny smile. Maybe 2? 2 it is. And tomorrow we start figuring out the scared hurts. Together. He kissed her forehead. At the door, her voice stopped him. Daddy? Thank you for coming today. Richard's eyes burned. Thank you for waiting for me, sweetheart. I know I made you wait way too long. It's okay. You're here now. Children had an incredible capacity for forgiveness. He would spend the rest of his life earning it. That night, Richard broke all his rules. He carried dinner up to Sophia's room. They sat together on her bed, eating grilled cheese and soup, watching a Disney movie. Sophia fell asleep before it ended, her head drooping onto his shoulder. He tucked her in, and then did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He sat in the chair beside her bed. And he stayed. Through the night, he jerked awake at every sound. Around 3 a.m., Sophia cried out a nightmare. Richard was there instantly, gathering her into his arms until she settled back to sleep. When dawn light filtered through curtains, he was still there. His back ached. His suit was wrinkled. He desperately needed coffee. But Sophia was sleeping peacefully, one small hand resting on his arm, making sure he wouldn't disappear. And Richard Whitmore, who'd built a fortune by knowing the value of things, finally understood what was truly priceless. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Therapy sessions with Dr. Clara Rivers became routine. At first, Sophia wouldn't speak, just drew pictures while Richard sat nearby. "She's processing," Clara explained. "Give her time." Slowly, Sophia began to open up through her art. The drawings changed, less black, more color. Isolated figures started joining hands. Windows turned from black to yellow. Richard attended every session, learning alongside his daughter. Clara taught him about active listening, validating emotions, creating safe spaces. "Sophia needs to know her sadness doesn't drive you away," Clara said. It was hard. Richard's instinct was to fix everything immediately. But he learned to sit with discomfort, to hold space for tears, to say, "I'm sorry that happened," instead of, "Don't worry." Margaret watched the transformation in both of them. The house came back to life. Richard worked from home. Office door always open. They established new routines. Breakfast together. He walked Sophia to school. Dinner at 6, no phones. Bedtime stories returned. Small things. Normal things. Things that should have been happening all along. The legal proceedings moved forward. Evidence was overwhelming. Laura's teaching license was revoked. The school board investigated. Richard learned Laura had been fired from previous schools for similar behavior. The system had failed other children before Sophia. That haunted him. "I want to make sure this never happens again," he told Claudia. "Then we changed the system," Claudia said. "Better background checks. Mandatory reporting. Support services." Thus began their partnership. Sophia's Haven Foundation launched 6 months later. A converted brownstone with warm colors, art supplies, therapy animals. Dr. Clara Rivers served as clinical director. Margaret volunteered as comfort grandma. Claudia headed outreach, and Richard learned to paint, to connect with Sophia during art therapy. "Daddy, trees don't look like green rectangles," Sophia giggled. "They don't. That explains a lot." Her laughter was the most beautiful sound. As Sophia healed, her real personality emerged. She was funny, quick with jokes and puns. She loved science and animals. She had strong opinions about ice cream. Mint chocolate chip was objectively superior. She also had difficulties. Loud noises triggered panic. She struggled with perfectionism. She had nightmares, but she was healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. 8 months after Laura's arrest, Sophia came home with a drawing. It showed their house reimagined, windows blazing with light, flowers in the garden. On the front steps stood 3 figures: Sophia, Richard, and a woman with kind eyes and paint-stained clothes. "That's Dr. Clara," Sophia explained. "I know she's not really our family, but she kind of feels like it. Is that okay?" Richard's throat tightened. Anna would always be Sophia's mother. But the fact that his daughter could trust again, that was everything. "That's more than okay, sweetheart. Should we invite her to dinner?" Sophia's face lit up. "Really? Really? You pick the day." On the 1-year anniversary of that terrible family day, Richard organized a celebration at Sophia's Haven. All the children in the program were invited. Instead of painful memories, They created new ones. Face painting, balloon animals, photo booths, all reimagined in safety and joy. Sophia, wearing her beloved sapphire blue dress, ran from activity to activity with friends. She was louder, more confident. The scared little girl was still part of her, but no longer defined her. Margaret appeared at Richard's elbow. You did good, sir. We did good. None of this happens without you. The photographer called for a group photo. Everyone gathered: children, families, staff, volunteers. Sophia grabbed Richard's hand on one side and Clara's on the other, pulling them into the frame. Come on, everyone together. As the camera flashed, Richard felt something shift. The guilt didn't disappear, it never fully would. But it transformed into determination. Determination to honor Anna's memory. Determination to protect every vulnerable child he could reach. Determination to turn his failures into lessons. That evening, Richard and Sophia walked through Sophia's Haven's quiet halls. The walls were covered with children's artwork drawings full of hope. Do you think we helped them, Daddy? Sophia asked. I think we're helping them. Healing takes time. I know. Sophia touched a rainbow drawing gently. I'm still healing too sometimes. Me too. And that's okay. She looked up at him, brown eyes serious. I'm glad you came to the school that day. Even though everything was hard after, I'm glad. Richard knelt to her level. Most scared I've ever been, running across that playground. But also the best decision I've ever made. Better than making millions of dollars? Better than anything. Because I got you back. Sophia threw her arms around his neck. You never really lost me, Daddy. I was just waiting. That night, as they drove home, Richard thought about the future. There would be challenges, continued therapy, possible setbacks, teenage years ahead. But they would face it together. That made all the difference. At home, they found Clara's car in the driveway. She'd stayed to help Margaret clean up. You didn't have to, Richard said. I wanted to, Clara replied. Besides, Margaret was sharing her apple pie recipe. Sophia perked up. Are you making pie, Margaret? Tomorrow, sweet girl. Tonight, someone needs bed. But I'm not even tired, a yawn interrupted. Everyone laughed. Richard carried Sophia upstairs. As he tucked her in, she looked up with drowsy contentment. This was a good day. The best, Richard agreed. Can we have more days like this? As many as possible, sweetheart. She was asleep before he finished the first page of their bedtime story. Richard closed the book, kissed her forehead, and turned on her nightlight that projected stars onto the ceiling. Downstairs, Clara and Margaret had tea in the living room. Richard poured himself a cup and joined them. Through the window, city lights twinkled. They talked about expanding the Haven music therapy, drama workshops. Richard listened, absorbed the warmth. Two women who genuinely cared, sharing ideas in his living room. Clara left around 10. Margaret went to the guest house. Alone, Richard walked through rooms that had once felt like a mausoleum. They felt different now. Lived in. Loved in. In his office, he opened the bottom drawer. The silver picture frame Lavra had hidden. He'd found it weeks after her arrest. Anna smiled from the photograph, holding baby Sophia, Richard's arm around both. A perfect moment before everything fell apart. I hope I'm making you proud, he whispered. I know I failed for a while. But I'm trying now. The photo didn't answer. But in the silence, Richard felt peace with the past. Anna was gone. That would always hurt. But honoring her memory didn't mean drowning in grief. It meant living fully, loving completely, being present for their beautiful daughter. He placed the photo on his desk where it belonged. Beside it, he set the new photo from that day's celebration, Sophia beaming between him and Clara, surrounded by happy children. 2 photos. 2 chapters. Both important. Both loved. Richard turned off the light. He stopped at Sophia's door, listening for her breathing. Still there. Still safe. He smiled and went to his room, exhausted in the best possible way. The exhaustion of a day well lived, of work that mattered, of love given and received. As he drifted off to sleep, His last thought was of Sophia's words. You never really lost me. Daddy, I was just waiting. Thank God for daughters who wait. Thank God for second chances. Thank God for the courage to choose love over grief. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, everyone in the Whitmore house slept peacefully, safely, surrounded by love. And that was everything that truly mattered.